And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us for my allergic or allergy-based smooth baritone here on a Sunday morning. We are here with Mr. Tracy Girlinghouse. I'm going to ask him to introduce himself fully so those who are listening can put a voice to a name. So good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. Just a little tired, little time shift there going for us. But my name is Tracy Girlinghouse. I'm the parish councilman for District 7, which encompasses the Walker area and the areas surrounding areas thereof. And I'm here to talk to you this morning about whatever you want to talk about, good sir.
Well, we are going to be talking about zoning.
Yes.
That is going to be the topic du jour. Did want to, before we jump into that, I didn't tell you this beforehand, but a small curveball. Possibly some redistricting coming up. So you
Yes.
actually geographically have one of the smallest districts.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that moves and changes, or if they maybe take yours and use that as the basis for the rest, because they can't really shrink it anymore.
No, my district will most definitely get smaller.
Okay.
Well, they do it by population.
Right,
So
right.
my area, on any scale or any way you draw it up, has gotten larger over the last 10 years. And they usually do that shortly after the census.
Right.
The 2016 flood kind of reshaped things differently, but my area hasn't gotten any smaller for certain. If you think along the we had discussed last time, which was probably about a year ago, you look at the school population, over half of the children that have the increase since was it 2010 to 2017?
Yep.
Over half of the increase from the entire parish is in a Walker School District. That alone ought to tell you that my district has grown.
And substantially.
Yeah. So it's going to, even though it's small now, it's going to get smaller. Mr. Wastom's district, last time I checked, had shrank significantly just because a lot of people had left the area that he encompasses. Now, it's probably recovered somewhat.
Sure.
I think if I remember correctly, it was it 14,000 people roughly per district?
Per district, yeah.
And I think
average.
what I saw at the time, and this was right around 6-8 months after the flood, he was like at 8,800, 8,900.
Sure.
So now I'm sure it's rebounded some.
Sure.
But then people have come in. I don't think there's any way of doing this without John's district, Mr. Wastom's district, getting bigger.
Right.
For the time being.
And the area he's discussing is the Denham Springs area.
Yes.
That would be District 4, represented by Councilman John Wascom. So now I'm asking all the guys that come in here about that, because, we did. It's taken a little bit because of COVID, but we did just recently complete a census, expecting some redistricting efforts to come forward from that. So going to shift over to the initial conversation, which was zoning. You recently had a conversation with parish officials about this, correct?
I did indeed.
Okay, so I'm not going to get into that just yet. If that's what you're looking for from this podcast, fast forward. You'll be able to jump on that probably a couple minutes from now. But want to start not from the beginning. That's a little cliche, but we're jumping back to 2013, right?
Okay.
We pass, I say we, Livingston Parish, goes through several years of having meetings around the parish, pulling together engineering, outside experience, that kind of thing, to put together this master plan. They pass it by resolution, which is non-binding, which pulls us forward to today, because the original master plan didn't do much. After accepting the original master plan, your council had, that was sort of born from hitting some stopping points with the master plan committee. So let's start with that committee. It was formed as it was 9 people, all appointed. And tell us a little bit about, because you were kind of the spearhead for this. So, and when I say kind of, you were the spearhead for this. So let's talk a little bit about your mindset. You wanted, it wasn't necessarily that you were trying to foist zoning on the whole parish, but you wanted to bring attention to it. So tell us a little bit about your mindset when you were proposing that committee to the full council.
Well, if you go into what's the idea of zoning and what it'll mean for everything going forward in the parish development, how we move forward with drainage, how we move forward, and and development itself directly affects drainage,
Sure.
how we go about attacking everything. Uh, Zoning is kind of the foundation for getting things right for
Okay.
everything in the parish. Uh, I knew that in order to do that, in my mindset at the time, we got to get this master plan adopted.
Mhm.
Now, I didn't realize to what degree the master plan that was adopted by resolution, but wasn't adopted as an ordinance from 2013, how out of date it was. It would have had to been updated to match with the way the parish is now. If you think about the parish in 2013 as to the parish today, I mean, it's diametrically different.
Sure.
Even if you take population and that growth aside, it's just the mindset's different. What they were proposing to zone was different, and the mindset on zoning is a lot different.
Hmm.
So in going forward, they said, well, we'll have to revamp it. We'll have to go through and redo the master plan completely. And originally, the master plan itself, the original master plan, was done mostly on a grant. It really didn't cost the parish any money, that much money directly.
Sure.
So once we got those numbers in front of us, a lot of times you just got to put something forward
Yeah. Right.
in order for them to say, well, this is what it's going to cost. This is the ins and outs of what we have to do that. I realized that we would be putting forward a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money just to get to that point, and then have no guarantee of going forward. Do we get zoning in place? Do we get that? So I just said, well, let's just adopt it as it is. Then you can kind of, yes, it is outdated. So I decided we can attack these things one at a time.
Okay.
The master plan is a huge document, and it's lofty, and it has a lot of goals that probably will never get met.
Sure.
I mean, that's just the reality of it. But it is considered, hey, if we can get everything we want and everything the way we want it to be, this is it.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
and even then, fast forward, 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't enough. Even if we got all of those things, it wasn't enough because the way the parish has changed,
Right.
and it has changed dramatically. So I said, well, what we're going to do is we're just going to push through. We're going to adopt it as it is and attack these things one at a time: zoning, drainage, the sewer, all those things. We'll attack them in pieces.
Sure.
It's a lot like one councilman. It's a lot for the whole council to attack all at once. So I focused my efforts on zoning, and I felt like that zoning was drainage is very extremely important. And in a way, if you just look at it, you think, well, it's more important than zoning. Well, yeah, it is in a way, but zoning is a way to make drainage better from the get go. It's not a patch; it's a fix, because that's how you start working on zoning, working on drainage once you get zoning in place, because it gives you so much more broad authority on how you move forward and how you develop. And so that was my idea, my plan.
Sure. And going into, so you skipped ahead on me a little bit. So
Sorry.
no, that's okay, because we'll go back and kind of talk about the committee, because one of the issues the committee had was that there was an immediate recognition that the old master plan was outdated, obviously, and they were sort of given that directive. And then it immediately came to light how expensive it would be to update it or create an entirely new document. So, one of the things that they tried to do was attack some things that I don't necessarily think were bad. I don't think you do either.
No.
But we're not necessarily, I guess you could call it the prime directive of the committee. So, the committee, I guess you can say, was kind of moving forward with these infrastructure projects is really what they were. And then COVID hit. and the committee stalled out, as a lot of governmental things
Sure.
did. I mean, private industry, any of that, a lot of it stalled out. What kind of as COVID settled, obviously, immediately you're just like everybody else. You're trying to figure out, okay, what am I do for my job? What am I, you know?
Yep.
But as you got back into the role of government, what were you thinking in terms of the master plan? I mean, because the committee had not met since probably late 2019, and it was struggling to get its feet back underneath it. So what were you thinking then?
In terms of the master plan or the
Yeah,
master plan committee?
the committee itself.
Okay. Well, when the new council took office, Mr. Delat felt like he wanted to singularly focus on, once we passed the master plan,
Mm-hmm.
um, I I felt like I was going to focus my efforts. And there's 9 of us.
Right.
I was going to focus my efforts on zoning.
Mm-hmm.
All those things are important.
Right.
But I was going to task myself with doing zoning, which I think, is bare enough.
Sure.
I was going to allow any other councilman to step forward and work on, the drainage aspect of it. And I think Mr. Delat's approach was he wanted to form another committee, like I think it's the Citizens Drainage Committee.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a problem with that, but I felt like that, that was one of the things the master plan committee was going to handle.
Right.
But I'm not going to get in the way of another councilman having it, that his approach is different. So I was for that. Hey, if you want to do that, go ahead. Someone at least he's stepping forward and he wants to try to address that in a different manner. The master plan committee now, I don't know. We're going to have to regroup and find out something else that they can help. Maybe they can help in conjunction with. I don't know. I have to get with my fellow councilmen on this.
Sure.
I've had meetings with the parish about moving zoning forward.
Right.
And I guess we'll get into that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been very productive. And so depending on, it's not just my committee, it's the committee that's put forward by the entire council.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have to get in communication and talk with these gentlemen about how we want to move forward with the master plan committee. Maybe there's something else they can address, but we'll see. I don't know. I felt like they've kind of, let's get the master plan updated. Well, that didn't happen. It just wasn't feasible. So
Right.
let's really adopt it. So they were going to move to drainage or sewer or any of those other avenues that need to be addressed. Like I saw all these things so much that need to be addressed in the parish. So I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure where to go forward with this. I'm sure there's an avenue that we can task them on.
Sure.
But it's really inevitably up to the entire council how they want to move forward with it.
Sure, and it sounds like in a way it's already moving forward, just in more of a segmented
Yes.
course.
Well, and we knew that was going to be the case whenever we had to back up, and punt on
Sure.
on revamping it. And I still absolutely feel that was the best process going forward. Okay, look, we can't spend another $200,000 on something and then have it fall apart at the last minute like it did to the council previous to when the 2012, 2013, before we took office.
Sure.
We figured out the best avenue going forward is to let's just pass the master plan as it is. As outdated and as it was still the best method going forward, because then if you pass all these ideas at once, then you can go in and work on the idea specifically and adjust it. In zoning, it's a huge undertaking, and it's a mindset too. I believe and I know that it's the best thing. It's the best thing going forward for the parish. I know that. We just got to get out there and teach people why it is and what it's going to do for them and what it's not going to do to them. Alleviate some fears. We're not trying to usurp the authority that you have in your land on what you can do and what you can do. But you have to remember that it's people said before all the time. A lot of people want to be able to do what they want to with their property, and for the most part, you will. But that means your neighbor can do whatever they want to with theirs, and a lot of times people don't like that.
Sure.
So the knife cuts both ways,
Mm-hmm.
but it also protects both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So and look, I live in Walker. It's zoned. Do you live in a zoned area?
I live in Denham.
Yeah. Do you even notice anything about it?
No, I mean you have many of the same rules that you would. I mean, in an unzoned area, because there's still developmental rules and things like that. You still have to go get a permit. Well, some people do, some people don't. But that's another conversation for another time.
It is. I will say this though. The thing about zoning is, and it might be out of place here, but I guess I need to state what I'm thinking about it. If you're zoned, let's put it, if you're not zoned, when something happens that you don't like, you definitely are aware of that.
Yeah.
If you're zoned, plenty of things never come to fruition, so you never know what zoning protected you against. Your representatives do, or they might not. Somebody might come in and say, look, I'm thinking about building a
gravel
pit or a concrete company here.
Or a firing range.
Yeah, and they look at the zone and they go, oh, well, we can't do that. And so your representatives might not even know. They might just go, look, it's zoned up, can't do it. Or they might say, well, let's go try to get it rezoned. It's kind of out of the way. And then, the council, be it whoever it is after us, before us, can look at that and go, no, that's a residential area. Cannot do that. And so it goes, so they go, oh, okay, and they go away. The average person doesn't know about that. But right now, you can do whatever you want to.
Right.
As long as it doesn't affect, something that's close to a school, if it's one of those situations close to a church. Right now it's the Wild West.
Right. And there are certain infrastructure projects that would benefit from zoning as well. I know you've discussed that in the past, especially when these large neighborhoods and subdivisions come up. You said we could have a lot more control over this and how the infrastructure works in that area if we had zoning.
Absolutely.
So, it is very interesting how sort of that committee came together, and in a way it did serve its purpose.
Absolutely.
It came together. It was determined that it was too expensive to update that master plan, but in a way it said, okay, but here's the breakdown of it. As we've accepted it, we as a council can go forth and work on the sewer system, work on zoning as you are working on these individual parts. So getting into those individual parts, you have had or moved forward with meetings with Parish President Leighton Ricks and others from the parish, I'm sure, to discuss zoning. So first and foremost, tell us a little bit about what happened at those meetings in the room where it happens for you Hamilton fans.
Okay, so me and the parish president sat down with Eddie Idell with Alvin Fairburn and Associates. We essentially said, well, how do you want to go forward? And in discussion, we come to the terms they're gonna break down each district and basically look at it and lay everything out. Some of it's already going to be predetermined. If there's a Dollar General there, well, that's commercial. If it's a neighborhood, well, it's residential. And then they probably will leave some areas. I'm not sure if they're going to put what they think it should be, and they probably will, or there's a designation that says, I can't think of quite what the term is, but it's not defined. We'll just say that's what it means. It might be not defined, and it's essentially it's not defined. It's zoned, not defined. In order to do something with it at that point, you have to define it.
Sure. Okay.
Which is really the idea, like that is completely not zoned. It's not defined, but it's zoned under basically not zoned.
Right.
You have to zone it at a later date. Uh, and you can do that for large swaths of land. You got, I don't think there's not going to be much of that like in my district, but if you go further out and, like in the Marpaw, French Settlement, Port Vincent, Holden areas, there, you might have acres and acres and acres of land and like a couple of houses. And so, you might want to not do anything with that, just not define that.
Sure.
But they're going to get maps together, and it's going to be the task of every councilman to, when you get your map, you're going to have to go and have discussions with people in your area, town halls, get them together. How would you like? What do you own? Do you own this? What do you think? Some of it's going to be very straightforward. Anything within this, like if you have a municipality, even if it's a smaller municipality like Port Vincent or French Settlement, or certain areas you're just going to know that's commercial, that's residential. So a lot of the things anywhere is going to be self-evident.
Sure.
You know what it is. You can bang out the specifics on everything else. With, I guess, individually, each person, how they want to do it. If they come and talk to you about it. And
that
then
would be landowners.
Landowners.
Okay.
And once we compile that, we'll put it together and come in and vote on it and pass it all at one time. I firmly believe we can do this by the end of the year. I firmly believe that.
That's ambitious.
Yes.
But kind of like you said about the original master plan, lofty, right?
Yes.
But lofty goals are meant for you to try to hit
Absolutely.
that crazy level. So what's interesting about what you just said, and this is a question that I was going to ask, the original master plan proposed the possibility of, when it was talking about enacting zoning, voting on a district by district level. It sounds like y'all are going to try a different approach.
I would rather do it all at once.
Okay.
But make no mistake, if we have to do it district by district, we will do that.
Okay.
If I feel like it's dragging out, because look, I'm, districts like mine, like Mr. Wascomb's, like Mr. Harris, even like Mr. Talbert and Mr. Keene, we're under the gun, more so than, Mr. Mack, Mr. Delat, even like, Mr. McMorris, he's kind of under the gun too. He has a split district where, half of it is very rural, and the other half is very like developmental. It's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer not to do that. I would prefer to do it all at once. Primarily because I think it kind of gives, if I do my district and then someone else does theirs, it'll I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, it'll take less pressure off. Because look, there's going to be some pushback for whatever reason, and there shouldn't be.
Sure.
But there's going to be some pushback. I mean, if you own, 1,500 acres and you're not quite sure what you want to do with it yet, yeah, okay. I mean, you might not want it zoned, but at the same time, if you're one of those individuals, just talk to your councilman.
Yeah.
Just say, hey, look, how do you want it to be zoned? Tell me. And you'll probably be okay.
Sure.
And even if you want to change it a later date, you can have it rezoned as long as it fits within the context of what you're trying to do at that point.
Right.
These guys out, honestly, in a way, the gentlemen who have those districts in the further areas, they need it more than we do, because the ship's kind of sailed on us. It's developed, for the most part. I have neighborhoods on top of neighborhoods in my district. So it's, I'm doing it to help try to salvage the infrastructure of District 7 and, everyone else. But those guys' districts are kind of, for the most part, untouched. But make no mistake, it's coming their way.
Yeah.
It is coming. And they need to understand, don't be us 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Right.
I mean, they really have an opportunity to set the ship right before the development comes at them full steam, because it is coming.
Yeah.
There's only so much land you can develop in Walker and Denham and Watson, and then it's going to start gravitating that way.
Sure.
Either from Baton Rouge headed this way, or from Hammond headed back from the other way, from that area. But it is coming that way. Get ahead of it.
Right, because in 2019 and 2020, even among COVID, or amid COVID, however you want to say that, 2 record-setting years in terms of real estate home sales, and that's just detached single-family home sales. That doesn't include people renting or moving into condos or apartments, anything like that. We're talking about just homes sold. 2,005 in 2019 and 2,400 and change in 2020. A lot of that because of decreased interest rates and things like that. Actually, did a podcast with my wife on Friday. She's a real estate broker. We talked about that. But like you said, I mean, that's just people coming, and they're still coming. And they're, the reasons to move here are valid. So, and a lot of that is, developmental land, especially developmental land that is in flood zone X, is running out.
Yep.
So, getting ahead of that curve in those areas with some kind of zoning. And like you said, you can have unidentified or unzoned at this point, but just trying to enact that would help. So sort of last question, y'all may have covered it or may not. When you're talking about enacting zoning on sort of a parish-wide scale, how would that affect sort of the planning and zoning committee? I would suppose that they would be delivered sort of new directives on how they would approve or disapprove.
Well, absolutely.
New projects.
Well, as of right now, it's just planning. And, so they would have to look at how something is zoned. And that committee or board, or, they look, and they're really just a vetting apparatus for us. If it's zoned residential and they want to do something commercial there, they'll look at, first they're going to have to ask to have it rezoned. I mean, you got to do that right off the bat. So, and we're creating a scenario where they're going to look at it and go, well, does it make sense to rezone this, considering what's happened around it since then? And they'll either go, yes, we recommend, no, we don't recommend. But it will become planning and zoning at that point.
Sure.
But ultimately, it's still up to the councilman, the elected official, to say no or yes. I agree with that. So I follow my recommendation, my person's recommendation from Mr. Burns from planning now, pretty strongly. But I have one against it too. Depending on how I feel, because at the end of the day, I was the one that was elected. So it falls on me. It falls on me to decide what I think is best. Very rarely do we disagree. Very rarely, but but it has happened.
Sure.
And not just have a different take on it. He has he's very community minded. His family's been here longer than mine has. The Burns have been here forever. He is very rooted in his community and doing the right thing. And that's why, part of the reason why he knows his job, and part of the reason why I picked him for that job. He's very good and very conscious of what's going on and what he wants to see things go in the future.
Sure. So again, you're expecting the parish president and Eddie Idell to make some kind of presentation to the council sometime in the future?
Absolutely. Probably pretty soon, to some degree, to explain where we're at going forward. They asked if we were going to have a zoning committee, and I said, well, no. The last thing we need to do is form another committee. So I feel like we're gonna use the ordinance committee, because ultimately it's going to come down in the form of an ordinance.
Right. Right.
So, they can present to the ordinance committee. And then, if however we feel about what's presented, if it requires a vote, do a vote and move it to the regular council, even if it's just steps going forward.
Sure.
But yeah, very soon they're going to give a direction on that. I know I don't believe it'll be very long. I think they can get the maps out in some form within a few months,
Okay.
2-3 months, maybe sooner. Then there's going to be a lot of reshaping. Be bringing out the look. We're going to send it back. They're going to redraw it. And this will probably have to happen a couple of times.
Sure, a lot of back and forth.
Yes, because we want the community and we want them involved. Absolutely.
Well, yeah.
Because there are going to be people that are concerned. But at the end of the day, like I've said before, you don't know what you're being protected against if you never see it.
Sure.
Where I live is zoned, and it just works. Where you lived is zoned, it just works. You don't. A lot of the stuff you don't know is working for you. But when we get that in place, then you have a good foundation to just start doing so much more and taking control of your development. Because I feel a lot of times it feels now that they're telling us what to do.
Right.
You make an ordinance, but ordinances have to be very specific.
Yeah.
So they just do one nuance outside the ordinance, to where it passes where our hands are tied.
Yeah.
They've got it, so we have to sign off on it because they're not asking for a waiver, where zoning kind of locks you in. And there's other things we need to do as well. We said in the meeting Thursday night, new development, we have to do things to make these new developments better for everyone. And if it's, retention ponds that have to pump out, pump down to a certain level, because a lot of retention ponds are just ponds.
Yeah.
If you have a rain event of any size, not even a flood, just a rain event, and your retention pond fills up, a month later, if that pond is still full, it's not doing its job.
Right.
It might as well just be a slab of dirt out there, because it's just holding water. Those ponds we have to figure out a way to get those retention ponds pumped back down. They have to be empty, but pump down to the offset level. How much dirt did you haul in? We need to pump that water out over a period of time to create an offset again.
Sure.
And I believe the new neighborhoods, the newer developments, there needs to be an impact fee imposed with each new neighborhood to help maintain the roads in those neighborhoods. Look, this is protecting the people that live here now. Anybody who buys into a new neighborhood that has an impact fee for the road and some kind of fee to help maintain those pumps those hypothetical pumps we're talking about, that helps everyone who lives here now. And the only people who pay for that at that level will be the people who are moving in, and they move in knowing that. There's no nice way to put this, but I put it at the meeting. I put it this way at the meeting the other night. Our job isn't to protect the people that don't live here yet. My job is to once they live here, then I will certainly protect them. They come in. That's our job. Our job is to work for them. But right now, I'm working for you. I'm working for the man down the street from me and the family, on the other side of town. And these neighborhoods being built that don't have these safeguards in place aren't protecting them. If we have an impact fee attached to that neighborhood, then it only helps when their roads need to be overlaid, that the money's in place, that we figure out a way to get these retention ponds pumped down. These are little things we can do, and it's done across the country, and we need to do that here because it's not, unless you change something, and the way we do things, then it's going to continue. It's the definition of insanity. If you don't change the way you do something and you expect a different result, well, I mean, you're never going to get it,
No.
you know?
How will, to kind of bring this all together, you talk about two specific examples. I'm sure more will come up
Sure.
as time goes along. But how will zoning help with specifically those two examples? Maybe an impact fee to maintain roads and a a fee or something passed along to the developer or whatever to make sure that pumps are in place for these retention ponds.
Well, in that situation, I, I believe these are things we can do now. I believe these are things we can do now without zoning.
So
You know,
you would consider those solutions as sort of part of a zoning package. It's all sort of a protective package for
correct.
people who currently live here. Okay.
Yeah. And that's really what we need to do. We need to protect the people who live here now. And first and foremost, I mean, those are the people that are my neighbors, that are my friends. Those are the ones who went and voted for me or against me. You know, but we have to protect everyone that lives here now first. And letting developments just come in and they just match the ordinances that we put in place. And like I said, understand when you do an ordinance, you have to be very specific. But that specificity allows them to go, well, this is what they're saying. Let's just do this, and they'll do an end around on you. Zoning will allow you can just make a broad boom, and say, well, do you fall in this?
Right.
And it gives you a much bigger platform to say yes and no on.
Sure.
Essentially, it gives the authority to the council that everyone kind of thinks we have now, but we don't.
Right.
We're hand tied. A lot of people still think, and less as time goes on, that it's like a police juror system where we have direct control, where we don't. There's a lot of times I would love to help somebody with something, but that doesn't fall within our purview.
Right.
It just doesn't. We write ordinances, we change ordinances, we eliminate ordinances sometimes because they're just outdated and don't make sense. We adjust the laws, we ratify the budget, and there's not much beyond that. I
Right.
mean, a few little nuances. I can't make someone come out like my ditch is clogged up. Can you clean it? I mean, I can call and ask.
Yeah.
But because that's not under my authority or anybody on the council's authority. We can call and ask, and sure, I can get the guy. I can get administration on the phone or DPW on the phone and say, hey, look, can you go take care of this for me? But make no mistake, they could say, well, man, we're not doing that if they wanted to. And when you're done, we get blamed, for not doing it and not handling it. But at the end of the day, it's not something we have authority over.
Sure.
And it's important that people understand that. And I think they do more now than ever before, because look, if I could do it or let's say I couldn't do it and it was within my authority, I would just say, look, I can't do it. The money's not there. I can't do it because there's another project going on up street, or it wouldn't matter, and they won't allow to do it because it'll adversely affect that. I would tell you why I couldn't do it if I can't do it.
Right.
But why I can't do those things is because it just is not in my authority realm. Per home rules charter. I've had someone just come up to me recently and said, you need to do this and that. And I said, well, look, I handed her my home rules charter. I said, go to page, I think it was like 16 or something. That's what I have authority over.
Yeah.
And if you need something that falls in there, let me know what you want, and I'll, if we're in agreement, I will certainly go to bat for you. But I can't make those things happen.
Right.
So, and I don't know if I got sidetracked or not, but
well, I mean, it's interesting. I think it comes back to what you said about zoning. If you need help with something, or just to give a specific example, I haven't been up there because of COVID, but when I had been, and you as a council were determining things like, are we going to allow this subdivision? Are we going to, things of that nature? You always, especially recently, were bringing up, they meet the criteria. My hands are tied. I cannot
Yep.
do anything for you.
Yep.
Sorry. I know that you are upset that this 350 home subdivision is coming on your, 13-foot road, which, by the way, folks, by Louisiana standards is not substandard, according to Chad Bacchus of Ford and Tablada. I'm sure I'm going to get a phone call on that one. But he's right, that it isn't. But those people made they made the law. They made the base level of the law. They met the ordinance requirements, and y'all just have to say, okay, or else you get sued. So without zoning, that's kind of the situation that you face here.
Yes.
So
it gives your council the authority. Now, certainly it is authority to have a broader scope to go, I don't like the way that impacts that area.
right,
It gives you a lot more avenues to say no
sure,
or say yes.
right,
It seems like in more cases than not, it's no nowadays. But you're right. If they come in and they're not asking for a waiver, then we have to grant the preliminary plat. Now, there's certain things that have to happen after that. They come in and get the preliminary plat, then they go, okay, we're going to do a drainage impact study. They don't want to do these things until they get the preliminary plat. But those go to engineering, and then they have an engineering firm. But then it comes to our firm, and then we don't really know what happens beyond that. It just says, yeah, they're good, or no, they need to do this, and then they're good.
yeah,
We kind of vote one time, and then that's the end of it.
sure.
And what we vote on is the very beginning. I mean, that area could be nothing but woods right now, and then this is how we want it to be on a sheet of paper. Well, we look at it, and it goes, well, it's got the roads this wide, it's this far. I mean, meets the criteria,
Right. And we have to roll with it.
and we have to.
Yeah.
So,
Sir, appreciate you taking the time on a Sunday morning.
I appreciate you having me. No problem at all.
And I'm sure as new pieces of this roll out, we'll have you back.
Absolutely.
And we'll be writing it up as new parts come to light, and as the parish president and y'all's engineers come to you and say, okay, this is where we're going to start, this is where we're going to go, that kind of thing.
We're going to get it done.
Yeah.
We're going to get it done.
And it sounds like you have lofty goals, right?
Yeah. Well, if I can get 70-80% of what I expect to get done, that's still a success.
Okay.
But we're going to get all of it done.
Okay. Well, I'd like you to give an outro. Just say your name.
My name is Tracy Girlinghouse. I'm from Walker. I represent District 7, which is the Walker area and surrounding area from Walker, soon to be shrinking because of the redistricting. But that's me. I'm go Cats.
Go Cats. And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us for the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show. Please remember that we are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. If you own a business, are a politician, or anything in between, and you'd like to get on the show, please email me, McHugh, that's MCHUGH, at LPN1898.com. One last time, we do very much appreciate you joining us, and we will see you next time.